Hello, Car Store here again. We're continuing from where we left off. I have re-enabled the symmetry feature of UV layout using the trick that I recently posted. And we're going to continue unwrapping this mesh. We'll focus on the hands and feet. I have to confess, this actually gave me quite a bit of a struggle. And I have started and aborted and restarted making this video about 3 different times now. And I think I've finally got a good answer. What I was originally trying to do was make a lateral cut all the way through the hand and around each finger and basically separate the top of the hand from the palm of the hand into 2 even pieces. This is very similar to the mesh design used by the DAZ 3D figurines that I mentioned in the first video. However, the MakeHuman mesh just would not play nicely into that respect. And I will show you what I mean by pressing Shift C on a seam. Let's say we want to cut along here. And Shift C, you can see, extends quite a ways. But rather than coming neatly around the tip of the finger, the seam comes up and over the fingernail. And it stops here, but you can see that if it continued, it would come over the top of this fingernail as well. And it would do this for every finger. These edge loops that MakeHuman uses has a loop of polygons around the top of each fingertip. And the DAZ figurines do not do that. They've got a different design to their mesh. So this was just not working out, and I just had to keep restarting it. And I finally settled on a possible answer that, while not quite as nice as the unwraps that DAZ came up with for their models, seemed to suffice fairly well for the MakeHuman meshes. What I decided to do was actually cut off each finger. So let's do that really quick here, right about there. And here. And here. And then finally the thumb, right about here. So you can see each cut goes all the way around. We press enter to commit that. And we can pull the hand away. And rather than separate the hand into 2 pieces, I ended up choosing a cut along here and keeping these parts of the mesh connected. And so we'll cut along here as well. So what we end up with when we unfold this is basically there'll be, well, if you can think of them as hinges here between the fingers. So let's drop that mesh to the UV view. And unwrapping each finger, well, since we can't come straight along the edge here without coming up and over the fingernail, what I chose to do is press the C key just below the fingernail, and that does not quite a complete loop. If you press the C key by itself, it extends about 10 edges, unless it hits something that it can't understand and has to make a decision with respect to the direction. And Shift C will extend beyond 10 edges. It will go as far as it can, again, unless it hits some sort of shape in the polygons where it has to make a decision about which direction to go in, it will tend to stop and just cut short your cut selection. So we'll do Shift C here and here. So it stops because we have this cut mark here. And so now we can backspace over these and remove them and change the direction of our cut to come around beneath the fingernail. Now if we did extend that over, it would end there. So let's remove these. Now when we commit that as a cut, when we unwrap this, we'll basically have a hinge of sorts along this side of the finger. So let's drop that to the UV view. And I'm going to repeat that with the other fingers. Cut there. And cut along here. And over to there. And the cut I'm choosing along the sides of the fingers is one that is going to be typically hidden from view. Since the fingers are beside each other, normally these cut seams will not be readily visible. So we'll cut along there. Remove those. And remove that one. And we'll cut along here. Shift C. Unmark those. Okay, and it looks like, yeah, we should bring it up to about there. Okay, good, it didn't extend further. So we can cut that, drop that to UV. And finally the thumb. Okay, that selected almost the complete loop. Which side should we make the cut on? This is technically the inside, so let's cut along here. Okay, and unmark these edges here and here. There we go, and drop that. So you can see, because we had symmetry on, we've dropped both hands. So by cutting up one hand, we've actually done the work and edited both of them. So let's press Shift F to bloat flatten. Okay, it's pretty heavily gnarled up here, but it looks like it's going to sort itself out. It's just taking a little bit of time. Okay, we'll press, in the interest of speeding this up, let's press space to stop that. And we'll make some cuts along here. And that separates the hand into two separate meshes, which is what we don't want. But if we do a Shift F and bloat flatten, this should, there we go. It figures it out a lot faster because there's much less geometry now. And now we can re-weld these together. So I'll just press W along here. And the M key to move that into place. Enter to commit the welds. And now we'll use the B, the flattening brush, to just clean up some of this. So we've got some distortion here over the knuckles. So red is reduced. So these polygons that are darker red are smaller than they are in the mesh. And then blue is bigger. So these polygons along here in the UV view are actually larger than the polygons in the mesh. So these are the webbing between the fingers here. And it's going to be really difficult to get rid of this distortion. But it's probably not going to be a big issue since they are between the fingers. So you don't have to worry too much about this. So we've got this hand over here. We'll press Shift F to bloat flatten that. And it figures things out a little bit faster. And we'll press stop on that. And these should be the thumbs. So one thing I liked was actually taking the thumb and reattaching it, but leaving the other fingers separate. So you can tell by the coloration that this thumb mesh belongs to this side of the model. So if we press W to weld along there, it wants to join in here. So let's fix that up. Move that into place, weld it, and use the B flattening brush to clean this up a bit. Okay, it's not really adjusting, so that's about as good as we're going to get. And we're going to have to do the same over here. We did not flatten the thumb for this other hand, but it still used the symmetry to join it into place. So let's do a Shift F bloat flatten and let UV layout figure out the whole thing. Okay, it's coming along. Okay, that's about it. I don't think we're going to get much better. But we'll just try the flattening brush. Okay, we're not getting much. So there we go. We've got the hand with the thumbs attached. So we just have to flatten each finger. So let's do Shift F. This should be pretty quick for each one. Yep, I'll stop it there. Shift F on that one. Okay. Let's move that out of the way. Shift F. There we go. Now technically, we can let UV layout perform the bloat flatten on all of these meshes. So if I press Shift F while not hovering over a particular mesh, just over a blank area here, you can see down in the bottom, in the message area, left mouse button is bloat box. So whatever you draw a box around, just a left click and drag to draw the box, it will perform the bloat flatten on all 4 of those meshes. But what I found is it doesn't finish the job. So you can see there's still quite a bit of distortion here in these meshes. So we need to do the flattening brush to continue the work. And it actually takes a bit of time, so we'll just do another bloat flatten. So if we do the bloat flatten one at a time manually, it does do a better job. But if we had really simple meshes, lots of them, maybe little doodads from a wall or something like that, that were really simple to bloat flatten, you can save a lot of time by letting UV Layout do the bloat flattening and via the box selection. But in this case, since it takes a few seconds of calculation, you're better off just doing it manually one at a time. But that's actually a feature with UV Layout, not just for bloat flattening, but for most things. You can select a whole bunch of objects and do different manipulations on them, either bloat flatten, or you can drop to the UV room. That's usually the D key from the edit room. You can press the D key while hovering somewhere else in 3D space and then drop several meshes into the UV room. And likewise undrop. If I wanted to move these meshes back into the edit room, I would do Shift D. And if I did a Shift D over here, you can see I've got an undrop box. So if I wanted, I would select all of these and put them back in the edit room. But we don't want to do that. So we'll flatten that. And there we go. So we've got both hands completely flattened. And let's just put the like for like meshes close to each other here. That's about it for the hand, I think. We can try to play around with this a little bit. We can consider cutting along here. Again, I've mentioned this is the webbing of between the fingers, so it's not all that important. But if we cut across there and across here, and we'll leave this one connected, now we can get some extra clearing here. And you'll notice this when I'm using the flattening brush, we see these black lines, and when I'm not using it, they're purple lines. But that's basically UV Layout knows that there is connected meshes here, and so it's trying to hold this shape. Okay, I think that's about the best we're going to get. So we'll do the same over here. We'll just clean this up a little bit. And remove some of that distortion. And I'll just mention this in passing. You might see a pattern similar to this. We've got red distortion around here, and you might think, well, if I make one more cut, it might help out and allow a little additional relaxation of the meshes here. But because these are red and they're smaller here in the UV view than they are in the actual 3D mesh, you'll probably find that these will try to overlap. Yep. So UV layout is trying to make these polygons bigger since they are actually bigger on the mesh. So actually, adding that extra cut is actually a bad idea in this case because you end up with overlapping polygons. So I'm going to do Control Z and remove that cut. So you're just going to have to pay, just deal with having a little bit of distortion here. You can try to manually move these polygons using Control and middle click. One of my earlier UV layout videos covers that, and you might be able to remove some distortion that way, but it always ends up kind of spreading further. So it's just a matter of how much distortion you're willing to live with. So we reduced it a little bit by nudging those polygons. So let's go on and return to the 3D room. And we'll think about unwrapping the feet. We're going to have a similar problem with the feet that we had with the hands. You can see that the edge loops come up and over the toenails. So again, I opted to actually cut the toes off the model. Right about there, and there, and there. And again, the edge loops follow a pretty odd shape here. So doing a Shift C right about here extends around. Well, actually, that one's not too bad. Let's move that out of the way so we can examine everything. Yeah, I think that's a different edge than I used before, so that one actually isn't too bad at all. Earlier I was getting some pretty odd shapes. One of these lower edges coming underneath the toe here. And what I'm trying to do with this, the goal I have is to separate the sole of the foot from the top of the foot. But again, we're like with the hand, we're going to keep the webbing connected. And that'll, well, maybe we can actually make these early cuts here and here. This one didn't go all the way, so I'll just do C, commit that. So we'll leave the webbing in the between the middle toe here. Now this still will not properly unfold because we've got part of the leg here extending upward. So while the sole of the foot can come out, this part can't unwrap. So we need a cut along the back here to help that unwrap. And we'll see what we get with that. We'll drop that to the UV room. And we'll make the same sort of cuts. Do C. Now I want to actually cut on the inside of this toe, so the little toe here, so we don't have a visible seam along here. But we've got the other meshes in our way, so we can either move the mesh out, or we can use the G key, which marks polygons. And if we do a double G tap, it will select everything. And with it selected, we press the H key for hide. And the menu down here, again, we've got the hide box. I could draw a box and hide polygons in the box. And our right mouse button will hide outside the box. So if I did a right mouse button click, it would hide all the polygons that are not in that box and preserve visual inspection the polygons that are inside the box. Oops. See, I actually drew a box and so it hid everything, so my bad. Press the H key to bring up the hide menu again, and this time U for undo undoes the hiding. But if we have a selected section of polygons here and we want to hide what is selected, we press the H key and then the G key, hide marked. And now that gives us enough room to move around and select inside here. So Shift C and unmark where we don't want it cut. There we go. Enter to commit those cuts. Drop that shell. Now H to hide, U for unhide, and we'll work on this one. And Shift G unmarks, so a double Shift G unmarks the whole thing in one shot. Let's just move it out of the way instead. So a cut here. And you can see this is some really odd geometry. I guess the toes are probably the worst part of the MakeHuman mesh. I just does not look like an actual human toe. Really oddly shaped, but oh well, it's what we've got. And over to here. Cut, drop. Next one. Cut here. And along here. And drop that. Just a couple more. And cut there. Now we're on the big toe. This is technically the visible side, so let's make our cut along this side. Shift C here. And unmark these. Over to here, unmark those. Enter, drop. Press 1 to go into the UV room, and Shift F to bloat flatten. So we already cut the toe webbing here. Let's see, it's adjusting it. It's not too bad. Okay, that's about as far as it's going to go. So I'll press space to stop that. So we've got some distortion here. This is where we're moving up the leg. So we've got a distortion here, and just like in that previous sample, we're in the edge of the thumb. If we cut these polygons to try to offer some relaxation and maybe remove this distortion. Because they're red, they'll actually try to grow in size, and we'll end up with overlapping polygons here. So this section here, I believe, is the back of a heel. But this is where we can use the G key. We can just select a bunch of polygons here with the G key. Press 3 to go into the 3D view. And then find those marked polygons. Yep, that's the back of the heel. So we've got some distortion there. And double Shift G to unmark those. But we'll continue with this. We'll bloat flatten the rest. Now we'll probably speed this part of the video up so that you don't have to watch all of this. Okay, there we go. So let's select all of these, move them into the middle. And like with the hands, we'll just get each side of the mesh together and close by one another. There we go. Now we don't have a lot of good coverage on this UV tile, so we should probably put these UVs inside this tile. So I'm going to adjust these a little bit, rotate them. And just try to get them more or less straight up and down. And one thing we might want to check on is this the top of the leg or the bottom? So again, we can use the G key. Just get a row there, switch to 3. And look around. Yep, that's the top of the leg. So what we really want here is for these to be this way. There we go. And we'll do the same thing here. Just select a row. Look at the 3D view. That'll be the arm. Was the dark side. Okay, that's the top of the shoulder. So, yeah, this is probably adequate. You can keep it facing in this direction. Now, one other feature before I end this video is under the pack menu. I didn't mention this when I made my pack video. If we select a bunch of meshes, and there's a reason why I put them all together, so this is all one hand here and the respective fingers, we can click on New Box. And that just boxes everything in and keeps them together. So when you're actually packing and UV Layout is considering different positions for all the meshes. These 5 meshes will stay more or less close together. It will try to optimize the packing inside the box. And you'll notice there's the shrink boxes to fit option. So if we can click on the corner, middle click with the space bar moves the box and moves it into there. So we can click on this hand, choose new box, and move it into there. Click on this foot and get all the toes in there. New box. Move the foot over. Oh, should probably be closer to this side maybe. And click on this. New box. And move that one over. Now again, we can manually arrange these meshes ourselves to suit our own tastes, or we can let the pack menu, pack option here, go ahead and do it for us. But I will save that for a later video. So there'll be another video where we unwrap the head, and then we will have 3 separate UV tiles, and we'll have the entire MakeHuman mesh unwrapped. So thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed this.